Hello, and welcome back to part 2 of Stargate Atlantis, Season 1, Episode 4, Suspicion. And I know it's been a while since part 1, and I'm sorry, I don't really have a good reason why it's been a while, to be honest. Well, I did get into Nolan, which is hard. I'm not a fan, but anyway, let's dive right in, shall we? And we left off last time where the non-South African South African was telling Taylor she can't go into the control area. And it is right at this point that John shows up and asks her to go with him on a walk. And though I love this series, this looks very fake. The sky, that is. I know they built the balcony set, or I'm pretty sure. I know they built a pretty big set, and I think the balcony is part of it. Obviously, the background is a green screen, but this green screen doesn't work. Although it is a moving green screen, because that little cloud there, it actually moves. It still looks fake though. Anyway, John tells Taylor that there might be a security leak on Atlantis, and to her credit, she takes it with aplomb. She doesn't take the fact that they are suspecting an Athosian of being the leak with equal aplomb, though. Also, she's wearing the necklace. I didn't point it out in every episode, but I think she has been wearing it constantly. The one John gave her in Rising. Now, John, who is actually not too bad at making his point, argues that he is personally getting tired of being confronted by Wraith every time he and she and Ford and Rodney step through the gate onto a planet. And Taylor still knows that he kind of suspects someone suspects an Athosian, and she's not happy about it, but it is what it is. And we cut to Elizabeth questioning Harling, and it starts out pretty rough, but Elizabeth handles it well, convincing Harling that it's in his best will to cooperate. Also, they have her back in regular clothing. I know this is a different recording of mine, but literally up to now in this episode, still the same episode, she was wearing her uniform. Now she's in regular clothing again, which is at least a nice simple shirt, and none of that gray horribleness of the previous episode. I just really wonder what the wardrobe department was thinking. It's like they couldn't just leave well enough alone. Or maybe they thought they needed to earn their keep. And seeing as all the rest of the cast are in uniform, even Taylor, they would use the character of Elizabeth as their one and only claim to pay. As Daniel always said, I'm not getting paid. Well, they decided they are getting paid. Like, come hell or high water, they are getting paid. Anyway, obviously Bates didn't get the memo. You know, the one that said Athosians are friends, not food. And Bates really reminds me of a Chihuahua. Actually, of a very specific Chihuahua, to be honest. A friend of mine used to have a Chihuahua, and that dog lived and died hating me in very particular. I bore no ill will against the animal, but he really just hated me. I have no idea why. And it was even the runt of the litter, so instead of a mini Chihuahua, it was a very, very mini Chihuahua, and it had one little lazy eye. Actually, the one eye just popped out more than the other one, and to the side, and it didn't have a tail. It was a really ugly little dog. My friend loved him. He hated me. Anyway, in his later years, the dog lost all his teeth because this dog was ridiculously old. Anyway, he lost all his teeth, or had it pulled, and then to boot, he became senile. So when I went to visit my friend, he would bite me on sight because obviously that's just the way he rolls, or rolled, and he still hated me. He's forgotten that we have come to a tentative um, agreement over the years. Except he only had one tooth left and not one of the canines, so it was really just him gumming me. And anyway, while I was there, after gumming me, he would remember, oh yeah, he knows me, he should stop eating me, and then he would settle down for a nap. Unfortunately, his brain got reset during his nap, so every time he woke up from his nap and he took a nap every time after we settled our disagreement. So I would come there, I would get gummed, he would realize there's no need to prove his point anymore. I've been put in my place. Then he would take a nap. Then he would wake, and every time he woke, he would get up furious at me and attack me. It's just this little ball of old dog smelling fur and scruff and gums. Anyway, Bates is not old, but he reminds me of that dog. Except, of course, the dog was just being a dog, not a little backstabbing, self-righteous, annoying little puke. So, obviously, with the little puke, the meeting turned sour very quickly. And Harley tells them he had come to this meeting expecting an interview, not an interrogation. And I have to agree with Elizabeth's look of well, whatever she's here, like, she would have been better off leaving Bates outside, especially with Holling. Bates has the subtlety of a chihuahua to the neck, a toothed chihuahua to the neck. And we cut to Rodney and Zelenka complaining about the food, and we learn that Rodney actually likes military rations, hospital food, and airplane food. Now, to be honest, I get why military food gets old fast. It's usually the same stuff over and over. But I do have some personal experience with it. Every time my dad returned from a stint in the army, he would bring us kids some rat packs, ration packs. Now, obviously, these are different from country to country. So, as they say these days, your miles may vary. But to us kids, it was always a treat. And we liked the stuff. Like, you had a little baggie. It was this long bag, and it had just a little bit of powder in there. So you added water and you shook it, and you got this really foul-tasting milkshake. Well, they called it milkshake, but it was foul-tasting, and we loved it. And there was a little bit of chewing gum in there, and little cookies, and potluck meat and veg. Like, you could either get like baked beans or like peas. I really hated the baked beans, though, but I thought it was cool. Although I do see why it gets old very fast. And and it was always just a treat. So yeah, Rodney liking it, it's weird. It's pretty weird. But anyway, Rodney is Rodney. And as he's being Rodney, he says that, oh wow, he has found something. But of course, we don't know what that something is, and neither, because he doesn't know what it is. Like, Zelenka's asking, what did you find? Roger's like, I just said, I don't know. These two are like two brothers, actually. I am not a brother. I do have one, but my main experience with brothers is from my husband's stories, and apparently these two are just like two brothers. Anyway, Zelenka can't help himself, and he touches something, and the two of them are startled by a noise. There is something happening outside, and as they go out, they find that they have found the bay doors for the jumper to leave the city onto the planet, not through the gate, but onto the planet itself. And I do love how every episode tells us a bit more about Atlantis and the world we're in. Obviously, the writers decided to unfold the story with us as the viewers, and it makes for a very exciting trip. We are as excited for the new discoveries as the characters are. Back in the living area, the Athosians are complaining with Holly as the ringleader. And as I was making this slideshow, as I drag in the screen captures, I don't always see the detail. Well, I don't see the details because they're tiny. So instead, I get this overall coloring scheme, like I know the brownish slides are now, and that's what I noticed. The two groups, the humans and the aliens, the humans, the Atlanteans and the Athosians, are always two different colors. The humans are always in cool blues and watery colors, while the Athosians are in warm browns and reds and yellows. And where we see both of them together, like this one, we can actually see the two colors compared to one another. And it's at this point where I was wondering if Elizabeth's shirt wasn't actually a deliberate choice, not just the wardrobe department figuring they needed to earn their keep, but her normal uniform is deep red. I would say maroon, but it's not really maroon. It's just a dark red. And so they not only got her out of her dark red uniform, but they dressed her in this cool blue shirt. Like it's an icy blue shirt. And it contrasts heavily with Holling's browns and yellows and reds. Also, she's seated constantly in front of the blue-green panels of the conference room, while Holling and the rest of them are always seated in front of the brown. And see, this is the kind of stuff that I wish I could discuss with someone from the series. I would love to know if they actually thought this through, or if it just happened naturally because they're that good at their jobs, or if I'm just reading something desperately into this, trying to make sense of the wardrobe's choices. On that note, however, I did confirm with the actress herself, like X, you can send a message and sometimes you get something back. So anyway, I did mention before, and actually the previous recording, that Swan Braun, the actress who played Hathor, has this lovely red hair, and I was hoping that it was just a wig they made her wear, and yeah, it was just a wig. They didn't make her cut her hair, which is really good news because I showed you the picture. She has really beautiful hair. Where was I? Back to the Athosian meeting, and it's just as they're all getting hot under the collar that Taylor walks in on them, and she's rightly angry. First, the humans excluded her from their meeting, a meeting she should have been invited to as part of John's team. And now her own people are excluding her from their meeting. Taylor is left dangling between two loyalties, between two wolves. And I like how the way she's dressed actually reflects that. She's wearing an Athosian shirt, but it's a cool purplish color, like a cool lavender. And she's wearing human military pants. It shows her division between the two worlds, the way she's trying to inhabit both worlds. Like she is with humans, but she's also Athosian. It's just a really cool representation of the struggle within her. Anyway, Taylor argues that Elizabeth is trying to protect everyone on the base, including the Athosians, because they're complaining about being restricted to quarters. And Holly tries to argue that she should have stood up for her people more. But she points out that they are the Atlanteans' guests, which is true. They are refugees, they are guests. And I think I've mentioned this, but in the first season, I think Taylor was supposed to embody the kick-ass alien, the kick-ass alien on the team, the same way Teal'c was the kick-ass alien for SG-1. But it's soon pretty obvious that she's just too tiny to be the muscle of the crew. Instead, the characteristic I associate the strongest with her is wisdom. And I feel like the writers landed on this after the first few episodes. Like in this episode, they are still going to try and push her fighting a bit, and yeah, she is a really good fighter, but she has an insight and wisdom and empathy about her that far outweighs her fighting skills. And I have to confess, I really love this characteristic. These days, it seems like too often the only idea people have of a strong female character is one who can hold their own in combat against men. I mean, just go take a gander at any Marvel movie. I mean, all the criticism that's been lobbied at all the female characters is basically this, and not just Marvel, but throughout, including DC and every other kind of action movies. Part of feminist ideals is that there should be that being a woman should not disqualify you. It should not count against you for a job or for opportunities that you are a woman. Most feminists do recognize that this does not negate the fact that men or women are inherently different. Men are men, women are women. The strongest women cannot compete with even average men physically. Like, women are built to carry babies and men are built to go fight the tigers. And apparently, according to one statistic I read, about a third of Americans think they can take on a bear. I have to admit I'm not that familiar with bears, but I think they overestimate their power, which is ironic, I know, at this point, because of that thing that went around that if you ran, what would you rather run into, a strange man or a bear in the woods? And I don't know enough about bears to really answer that, but I'm getting really sidetracked. Anyway, I think a lot of people interpreted the idea that women should not be disqualified from opportunities because they're women to mean that they are equal in physical strength to men. And this just isn't true. And I feel that in the great before, I don't know when this took off at its worst, but in the great before, let's say the end of 2007 is the end of the great before. So in the great before, female characters could be strong in other ways and they could be respected for who they are. I think I've mentioned this before where Elizabeth is concerned, but Taylor is so much an example of this. I mean, her wisdom, her insight, like, she's like a D&D character which has her wisdom and insight way up there and somehow managed to get her fighting up there as well, her agility, I think. So she's pretty impressive, but her greatest feature is her wisdom, and that is far more interesting to me than Ronan's physical strength, although let's be honest, Ronan is pretty awesome. But we'll get to him later on. So where was I? At this point, after Taylor rightfully pointed out there are guests, Holling tells her that they would rather go. And Taylor slips and asks, "Where would you go? Where would you go?" And I really feel badly for Taylor. I've known people like Harling, and though they usually mean well, they are always stirring trouble. And of course, he takes her up on the slip up to argue with her. But she finally tells him he must know that in his heart, none of the Thosians could be the traitor, and so they have nothing to fear. He, of course, asks Taylor if she trusts Elizabeth that much, trusts her with their lives, and she very simply replies that she does. And this is a lovely moment for Taylor. Of course, the plot needed her to stay on Atlantis, while the budget needed the Thosians to go away. But the way she goes about throwing her lot with the Atlanteans is both heartbreaking and fierce. And part of me is really sorry. I'm really sad that we don't see as much of her and Elizabeth's friendship throughout the rest of the series. It's often implied, but we don't get that much of it. And yeah, though we see some, it's not enough as far as I'm concerned. But in this moment, Taylor confesses that she knows the burdens of leadership, and I feel that part of her must be relieved to finally have found someone to talk to. You know, Elizabeth is in the same shoes that she is. Elizabeth knows how hard everything has been on her. And at this point, I'm kind of reminded of, every time I watch this, I'm reminded of one of the Star Trek Voyager episodes, The Cloud, which is also pretty early in the first season, where Captain Janeway talks of the separation she needs to keep between herself and the crew to be an efficient leader. But it's making her feel isolated and vulnerable. Of course, in the Star Trek episode, Harry musters up the courage to ask her to join them in the holodeck, and some of the distance between captain and crew is close. In this episode of Atlantis, Taylor and Elizabeth start their friendship, so I feel it functions the same way. Of course, I have no idea of knowing if the writers thought about it that clearly. I mean, they probably didn't even think of Star Trek. That's just me. You see, the thing about good writers is that much of what makes a good story comes naturally. Good writers have written so many stories and have honed their craft so much that a lot of the subtle things that happens in a story comes naturally because they have done it so often and they are that good at it. And I really wish I knew more about the ins and outs, but I mean, I'll just continue guessing about it, speculating. Taylor continues to tell all of her people, you know, the ones scattered there, that they should just give the humans a chance, not just to prove that the Athosians are innocent, but also that they can help, that the humans can help in the war against the Wraith. And it is at this point that Harling tells Taylor that the humans aren't the ancestors, no matter how hard she wishes them to be. And I love the parallel between Elizabeth's blind faith in the Lantians, you know, the guys who built the gates and Atlantis, and Taylor's faith in the humans. And we cut to Ford scheming to go with John in the jumper to explore the planet. He even brought a nice turkey sandwich for the trip, the thing John asked for way back in Rising from the jumper, and the jumper couldn't produce, just the life science detector. And meanwhile, Taylor is the next person to be interviewed by Elizabeth, although she skipped ahead. She decided she's going to be the next. And she is dressed in what I assume to be her Sunday best, so to speak. It's also, this shot isn't that clear, but we'll see. It's a brown outfit, and it is completely Athosian. It's as if Taylor's trying to be the best, to be Athosian, not Atlantean. when she brings the she's now speaking for her people, not as part of Elizabeth's or John's team. But it also, regardless of that idea, it also gives us this great contrast again of Taylor in her browns and the human in the blues. And yes, she is that tiny. Although that's the weird thing. According to the internet, she's 1.63 meters tall, which I converted for you conveniently to inches and feet. Feet, inches. Anyway, and apparently that's just about this much shorter than I am, and I am pretty much medium height for a woman. So anyway, she's just really tiny. I don't know how she manages to both not be that short and be that tiny. Anyway, her surprise arrival surprises Elizabeth enough that she gets up to greet her, which Elizabeth notably didn't do for Harding, which is just a sign of mutual respect between the two women. And here we get another one of Taylor's amazing early season scenes. As with Harling, Bates is blunt. He's just a blunt chihuahua to the neck, and he's a bit of an asshole. And instead of rising to the bait as Harling did, Taylor really only gives him this look. She only gives him this side eye, and then she turns her back on him and she ignores him. She doesn't talk to him at all, and she just talks to Elizabeth, and she emphasizes how similar her and Elizabeth's positions as leaders are. Also, see how she is sitting in front of the brown panels of the conference room, creating that contrast between humans and aliens again. And we also get genuine disappointment from Elizabeth when Taylor mentions that the Athosians might leave Atlantis. I think at this point, the two women's respect for one another has firmly been planted. And though their people might not always understand what they're trying to do, they have a sounding board in one another. They have a friend in one another. Cutting back to the jumper and the cool blues, John is given a moment to explain to Ford and to us how inertial dampeners make everything work. And we also see that Ford has a bit of a weak stomach for the graphic description of death by G-force. I mean, I get it, but I mean, it's a very cool description. And it's at this point that Ford spots land, and I have to be brutally honest here. The graphics don't sell me on it. This is literally what we see. This is literally what we see, and I've been looking at it I've seen the shots often. I've been looking at it. I don't see land. I don't see land. I just see swirling clouds. So good for Ford for making out land in that mess. And we don't linger on the flight as we cut to the meeting room and John and Ford reporting back on the discovery of a big continent on the planet. And trust Bates to immediately jump to the idea to send the Athosians to go live on what they would call the mainland. Rodney gets, this is completely irrelevant to the story, but I just want to add that when Bates says he can't imagine the mainland being worse than the Athosians' planet, the one they came from, Rodney tells him that might just be due to a lack of imagination on his part. And yes, I'm all there for dissing on Bates. Honestly, I think I dislike Bates more than Kavanaugh. Of course, John is against the idea, but when he turns to Elizabeth for support, she basically tells him, we'll see. When she is more words, but that's what it comes out down to. And I guess we're supposed to wonder how this could play out and who will be proved correct. Is John correct, or is Bates and Elizabeth correct? Or are John? Anyway, I have to admit, I don't like the forced teaming of Bates and Elizabeth versus John. especially since Biggs will stab Elizabeth in the back in Hot Zone. I mean, both Biggs and John will, but I guess I'll get back to that later. And for once, Holling is making things easier on everyone as he seeks out Elizabeth and offers to take himself and his people to the mainland to explore it. And I mean, he does have a point. It's kind of a similar point to the one Bates have, but they can't stay on Atlantis. They can't go to another planet, seeing as gate travel has been suspended, and the mainland gives them a third option. However, when Elizabeth asks Holling if he had discussed this with Taylor, he tells her that Taylor had made her decision. And it really is a shame we don't dig I don't think we dig deep enough into Taylor's isolation in this or the coming episodes, although we touch on it, but we don't really delve into it. I think there's much more that could have been done about her isolation, about how she has to choose between two wolves. But I mean, the little we get is pretty solid. And that's it. That's enough for today. Although we are only halfway through the episode, but there it is. And someone recently told me I'm actually supposed to remind you to like, subscribe, comment, and share. But you know what? You know that already. So do whatever your heart tells you to do, and I'll see you next time.